Welcome to the Football Guys Dynasty Show. It's me, your favorite professional nerd, Jagger May, and then joining me as always is our Dynasty captain, Jeff Bell. And we have Matt Cooper back, and we're excited to have him as promised. We are going to talk about running backs, specifically 2025 prospects. And Matt runs the Couch Scouts, and he runs the Dynasty Nerds film room. So he's one of the most plugged in people. Also, I bug him all the time for film. Um, as always, you guys every week are mad at me about my opinion on Kaleb Johnson. So we're going to talk about him in detail. I'm just going to jump right into it. His strengths. He is a powerful runner with a vicious stiff arm and an elite downhill gap runner. I had another one on here. He has good feet, very fast feet for his size. I get why people like him. Weaknesses, kind of tight feet. I'm concerned about his long speed compared to the rest of his class. I think it's adequate, but it's nothing to like sniff at or be excited about. It's college and his limited agility. He also doesn't get a whole lot of work in the passing game. There's not a lot to really see. My current comp for him is a faster Najee Harris with less receiving. And that sounds great, but that also is not. I just to like a lot of people can't comprehend. Like I texted Jeff. I think Kaleb Johnson's a good player, but he's not a future Hall of Famer like a lot of people think. So Matt, I'll actually start with you this time. Where are you at with Kaleb Johnson? Am I crazy? Am I taking crazy pills?
I don't think you're crazy, and I didn't know what to expect because I had not studied him up until when you reached out and said we were going to be talking about him on the show. So I got in the film room and started watching the tape, and I had heard so much hype on him. People talking about him as RB2 in the class, and obviously the box score is great, almost 1,600 yards and over 20 rushing touchdowns. Like he's had a monster season. He's got over 1,000 yards after contact this season, which is crazy. Uh, but when I turned on the tape, I came in a lot of bit underwhelmed with him.
Mhm.
I felt like he's a bit of a one trick pony. Like
Yeah,
he's big and he breaks tackles, and when he gets in the open field, he's got some good speed. Down, you mentioned downhill runner. I think north south, he's got good burst when he can just go in a straight line. He has almost no burst coming out of cuts. There's
yeah.
very little wiggle to his game. He's not elusive at all. I don't know that I saw him make anybody miss. I watched 6 games of all 22 on him, full games, every snap that he played. I don't know that I ever saw him make somebody miss. And the receiving, it's all right. Like he looked like he had capable hands for dump offs and stuff, but definitely wasn't being used as like a weapon in that arena. So overall, to me, you said Najee Harris. I like that. Mine was like a slower Derrick Henry. You said faster Najee Harris. I said slower Derrick Henry. So
That's fair. Yeah, that's somewhere in the
that's
middle.
basically the same. We're saying the same thing in different ways, I think. So,
Yeah.
uh, Derrick Henry is another guy that like is not really elusive. If the lane opens up for him, he can house it. Running very fast in a straight line at a big size, and I think Kaleb Johnson is a lot of that too. But um, yeah, it's there's not a lot else there besides he's pretty fast for being a big guy, and he can break some tackles.
Yeah. I see, like I keep saying, I think there might be 3 or 4 jobs that we'll really like for fantasy. I don't like Kaleb Johnson. I see him falling and ended up in a committee. Jeff, where are you at with Kaleb Johnson?
I think there's some Pacheco there. I think there's a little bit of he's faster, but like some Trent Richardson there. Like I always think back to Trent Richardson when he was coming out and you would see the highlights. And it was one of those of like everybody was raving about him as a prospect, but then I would see the defensive backs running faster than him. And it was like, this doesn't seem ideal. Like this kid from Mississippi State is running faster than this Heisman Trophy elite level running back. I mean, there's speed in Johnson's game, but I think you guys are exactly right on your analysis there on the wiggles lacking. It certainly reminds he's a guy that in the Big Ten West, when it's a little bit cold and some of these guys start to make some business decisions, he's going to bounce off some guys, and he's going, if you don't bring it to take him down, he's going to get some yards there. But at the NFL level, like the vision, those types of things, I mean, yeah, you guys hit it great on your analysis there. Like, I'm not seeing that either.
Yeah. And like guys, this is why you have scouts. And I know everyone tagged Dane Brugler like 4 times. They're like, well, Dane Brugler hasn't gone in the first round. I'm like, okay, you know, everyone misses sometimes. Maybe I'm going to, maybe Dane Brugler is.
He's not a
Yeah.
first round running back.
He's not a first round running back at all. I'm normally pretty in lockstep with Brugler. I use him to check my homework sometimes. And I saw that and I'm like, wow, I don't believe you at all. Like, I'm just not there, and
No,
and also
you've got to be elite in the passing game to be considered a first
to be a first round. Yeah. And he's not at all. He's not. Before we go to our next guy, actually, no, I'm not done, because that's another thing I wanted to say. Like, Najee Harris, we talked about this in the group chat. People forget that he is a good receiver. Like, that's why I think I'd rather have a better receiver than a faster Najee Harris. I either want you to be Derrick Henry or I want you to be able to do a little bit like Najee Harris's first season. I joked he was an H-back. He just pass blocked and caught passes and occasionally ran into the back of the center on a halfback dive. That's how they were using him. So, I'm sorry, guys. Like, again, Kaleb Johnson, I think, is a good player, and I definitely think he could fall in a situation and end up being a team's bell cow. And that's just what happens with running backs. Currently, I just like 7 other running backs a lot better than him, and I don't think that's crazy.
I think he's the type of guy that with his play style, he needs like 20 plus carries to kind of get in
Yep.
that rhythm, beat down the defense. Eventually, a big hole is going to open up, and he's going to have some chunk runs. I just don't know that he's the type of guy in the modern NFL where almost everybody's in a committee. If he's the 2-down guy in a committee and he's getting 15 carries a game without much receiving work, I just don't know that he's the type of guy that can turn that into consistent fantasy production.
Yeah. It's like, Jeff, you talked about this here recently. It's like, cool. He got a 70-yard run. There's 7 points for you. And at most, if he gets 90 yards, you got 9 points. That's our like low end RB2 production. And I think people having him as RB2 is just crazy. Before we go any further, we got to pay some bills. If you like content like this, and especially if you like rookie content, you want to get a subscription over to footballguys.com/plans. Me and Jeff, friend Mike Cash, a couple others, we're going to be put together our usual rookie guide. A lot of detail. We're talking about as many prospects as corporate will let us talk about. So you'll want to sign up for that ASAP. Also hit the like and subscribe button. Me and Jeff will continue to be hitting this hard and keeping you up to date. We're winding down, so we're really going to be hitting on buys, sells, and rebuilding. And at the end of the season, we'll get into some commission stuff. So especially if you're over on Spotify or Apple, leave us a review. The next guy we want to talk about, I'm excited to talk about because a lot of people haven't said enough. Did you know that as much as people love Kaleb Johnson, do you know that he's not the first team all Big Ten? It's actually this guy, Kyle Monangai, who I have ahead, and people think I'm crazy. His strengths, modest receiver. He doesn't have a lot of receiving production because Rutgers just isn't that great of a school, but you could see it on tape. What I do like, he has elite contact balance, and even with his size, he's 5'9", 210 pounds is what he's listed at. He moves piles. This dude is fast, finds a hole. He reminds me of what a lot of people like in the outside zone, and I see him being at least the 1A in a committee, or the part that gives us a lot of fantasy points in the committee. His weaknesses, he's sometimes slow to find the cutback lane. That just means he lacks a little bit of patience. He gets running too far ahead of his guards and can't find an easy cutback hole. And that's just a minor gripe. Am I too high on him, Matt?
You might be. I mean, I when I turned on the tape, I was a little underwhelmed with him too. To be honest with you, I liked what I saw watching live in some college games with Kyle Monangai. Obviously, he's back-to-back 1,200-yard seasons. I thought, hey, maybe this guy will be one of my favorite sleepers in the class. And I just thought he was a little bit slow for me. Like,
what?
I don't know, man. Like, maybe it's a burst versus top speed thing, because there were some moments where it was like, okay, maybe he's not slow. Maybe he is, but after watching, uh, I thought Kaleb Johnson was faster than him. I thought Woody Marks, who we're going to talk about in a minute. I thought out of the five guys that we watched for this, I thought he was the slowest one. I just, to me, he looked like he was running stuck in mud a little bit. He had good contact balance and like a good power runner, kind of a thick guy at like 5'9", 210 ish.
It's like him and Ashton Genty are little stocky guys.
Yeah, but Genty just has so much more juice. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I'm not comparing them at all. Yeah,
No,
like
you can't. You can't compare those two. That's not fair. But
yeah.
I just think, to me, when I watched Kyle Monangai, he kind of reminded me of like Gus Edwards. Like, just he can make he can break some tackles, but he just doesn't have NFL level juice. He's a good, tough physical runner. He's going to find the right hole most of the time. I think he's a solid backup at the NFL level.
Dang. So would you rather have him or Kaleb Johnson? I feel like we watched two different prospects here.
I have Kaleb Johnson graded a little bit higher.
Hot dog. Jeff, you're the tiebreaker here. Where are you at?
I'd rather have Kaleb Johnson too. Monangai, Kamani Vidal is the guy that he kind of last year's class is what he reminds me of, like that fire hydrant type build, that college level explosion that doesn't exactly, one of those that these 15-yard runs in college turns to like 2.5-yard runs in the NFL is like kind of where it is. A lot of pile pushing with Monangai. I mean, you're right there on the power. I think you've seen that. The ability to keep his legs moving and the ability to run into guys and kind of keep moving there. The problem is when you got like a 5'8", like 210-pound guy or 207-pound guy that running in guys at the NFL level, they're not pushing piles, they're bouncing off and falling to the ground. And so that's kind of where I stand with him.
I'll revisit the tape, guys. I thought he was fast.
Hey, man, I know you love him, but
yeah,
I mean, Vidal's decently fast. It's just that if it's fast at the college level, and it doesn't really show up at the NFL level.
See, I didn't think Vidal. I just thought Vidal wasn't a good football player. That's where I was at with him. Where like we talk about that. That's like I keep bringing up Chase Brown, and I find any reason for him to catch a stray, I guess. But I was like, I just don't think he's a good football player. Like he's good at certain things, but like he can't find the hole. Sometimes I think he's playing with like a blind man's cane. Doesn't pass block well, stuff like that. I don't think those things with Monangai. Well, you guys are haters, and Matt, you're not allowed back because you disagree. No, I'm kidding. So the next guy, what you guys described is exactly how I feel about our next guy is Trevor Etienne. I think he is okay. I think he's perfectly fine. I think he's probably, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes, I wouldn't say undrafted, but like pretty low just because of the talent that is in here. He's a smart runner, good contact balance. He always keeps his feet moving. He's a Georgia guy. I just described any Georgia Alabama running back ever. Weaknesses, breakaway speed. Oh, shocker. A Georgia or Alabama running back. Modest size. He's got all right size. And he's got decent hands. Like he can catch a ball. He can catch away from his body. That's what I really grade with. You can always tell a running back where they're like doing the Quentin Johnston with it, or they can actually like catch away from their body. I'm like, oh, that's a guy that might be able to do something down the field. Other than that, it's just his athleticism is pretty mid. I'm sure you've watched a lot. So Jeff, we'll start with you. Where are you at with Etienne?
Well, we mentioned I'm going to throw it to Matt because we mentioned the name Etienne, and we know Matt's a Clemson guy. I mean, that's hallowed ground.
Oh,
in Clemson there. I want Matt to go first.
Go ahead.
I do live in Clemson, but I want to clarify that I'm an NC State graduate. Go Wolfpack! But no, I do like Etienne, and I don't know, Jag. I think he's faster than Kyle Monangai. I think he's got much better burst, like in short areas, more explosive.
See,
out
his
of
burst is
cuts.
fine. It's a breakaway speed is where I'm at. Like
Well, I
I
think
grade those
burst is more
differently.
important anyway, but I
I do.
think like for a running back, burst is more important than breakaway speed. But to me, like night and day difference between him and Monangai as athletes when I'm watching him on tape. Like Etienne just has explosion out of his legs, and he can explode out of cuts, make guys miss. He's one of the more elusive backs that I've watched so far in this class. I did see a couple of drops on his tape, which for a smaller guy, you don't love to see that. Georgia didn't use him a ton in the passing game, but it's Georgia. Like, they don't throw to running
They don't.
backs a
Yeah.
ton anyway.
Yeah.
But I really liked what I saw from Trevor Etienne. I had a higher grade on him than either of the guys that we've talked about so far.
I liked him too, to be honest with you. We know he's going to go around earlier than he probably should in rookie drafts because of his last name, just in general. But I think he's a good back, and we've seen he really has been the best Georgia back this year. They missed him when he was out, and he's been. I think Matt kind of hit the nail on the head there. I do think he's better than Monangai. It's just a different runner. It's apples and oranges to me because Monangai is, like I said, a pile mover, whereas I
Mm-hmm.
think Etienne is going to be a little bit more of. He's not the athlete his brother is, and I don't know that he's refined as his brother is when it comes to the receiving game. And even then, I know that refining in the receiving game was a major thing that Travis Etienne had to work on his final year. So you've got that, but I think he is a good natural runner. He understands how to play the position. I think he's going to be a good complementary back, more of a passing down type player than he's going to be a cow or anything like that.
Yeah, so he's listed
Yeah.
at 5'9", 205. So he is, built more like a scat back
Yeah.
type.
He looks
And
bigger than that, though. Like I don't.
Looks a little
He's
bit
one of those weird.
thicker than that, but yeah.
yeah, I mean, he's definitely more comfortable out on the edge, I think, than between the tackles. Not that he's incapable of the between the tackles stuff. I think he has good balance, and he runs hard, plays with good pad level. Like, I think he plays a little bigger than you would think just looking at 5'9", 205. But definitely more of an in space, elusive, like stylistically very different from Monangai. But yeah, he's quick, he's twitchy, he's explosive. He was fun to watch. I like Trevor Etienne.
Yep. Like I right now I have him like a 73, which that is what I call like quality depth for like a team, and then especially if he gets into an offense that can, I would say, does a little bit more than Georgia does, because Georgia, let's say they're not like, let's say the most inventive offense out there, like maybe we could see more. And like I've yo-yoed ETN like 3 times because like he was like my RB4 from last season, and I've dropped him from this season. And it's like, and this is why measurables are so important, and like the combine, because I really don't believe speed in the Mountain West. Or like if you're not breaking away from every player in the Mountain West, I just can't think that you're fast. This isn't anything to do with Astagenti at all. This is just a conference that I know. That he doesn't count. But like with ETN in the SEC, that's different. Every dude there is like has a chance or shot in most cases to play on Sunday. You're playing a lot more than, and that's why like gauging long speed is a little bit like, at least for me, difficult. And that's why out of any, just to be completely candid, out of any position I ever miss on, it's running back here. Like I feel like running back, and I don't even think it's anyone's fault sometimes, because teams value running backs differently, and some guys just fall into situations to where as long as you got a decent offensive line that you can like be all right. How many people were saying Pacheco was going to be the guy that he was going to be?
So I think Trevor Etienne falls somewhere between James Cook and Kenny McIntosh. So like he like sits
I
kind of
agree.
in the middle of those guys.
Yeah, I'm curious to see too what kind of draft capital he gets. You mentioned earlier, Jag, that you think it's going to be pretty poor, and that wouldn't shock me just because the class is as loaded as it is, and the production as far as just raw box score numbers is not as strong for ETN as any of the other guys, not even close, that we're going to be talking about here. And I just don't hear a lot of buzz about him either from like NFL evaluators
Mhm.
and the draft community. So I'm curious. He might even go back to school. I
I was
I,
gonna
I want to
say
see how it all plays out, but just from a pure film perspective, like he is. There's a lot of guys I have not graded yet. So
Mhm.
there's like 20 guys. I mean, I haven't graded Hampton. I haven't graded. There's so many big names, Judkins. But out of the 6 or 7 guys that I have put a film grade on so far, Etienne's my RB2.
Really?
But yeah, but film grade, is not the same as rankings because,
Yeah.
again, if he ends up like late day 3 pick, buried on a depth chart somewhere, like you can be like, oh man, I love that guy's tape, but be realistic that his fantasy outlook is not good. So there's still a lot more of the process to play out. But I really like Trevor Etienne.
And
Yeah, I know.
that's
Jag, we're on two different wavelengths on this when it comes to like the lists that we need to be looking at, because you are doing a great job. You're going very deep and you're getting everybody, and I like to wait until January a little bit more because the between NIL and all that stuff, the depth of the class that we've all been mentioning, I think you're going to have a lot of guys going back that can go back because I think the money is going to make sense because when you start to stack it up, if there's 20 draftable running backs, then you're going to have guys that are going to go undrafted that in most years probably would have no business going undrafted. So I think you're going to run into situations where there's going to be business decisions that are going to lean towards players going back to school.
You nailed that because like Katron Allen, if he's got eligibility, I would stay if I were them. And I've actually said this in my article that I had 20 in my first article graded. Like now I have like 23. I expect half of those guys to go back because if you have a weak class in 2026, I can go make a couple of million college and then I can get fourth or third round draft capital instead of sixth or seventh round draft capital. And I'm easily cuttable because they haven't invested in me. And that's something I have taken into account for. And like Quinshon Judkins, I know I was talking to Dame over Draft Network, and he's heard from scouts already that they think that he may stay to be a bell cow and get that first or second round draft capital. So he might be some like a big name that might come off the board. I
Well,
don't like you're the Ohio State guy, so
he probably would make more playing for Ohio State next year than he would in the NFL. I mean, we know running backs, it's all about that second contract because how many of them are actually going to go in the first round? And especially a guy like Judkins hasn't really shown it in the past game to believe that he would be a first round pick. It's just that you're in a situation, you can hit the transfer portal, you can be a free agent, you can have boosters that are mad at Alabama missing the playoff that want to throw $2 million at this running back or whatever else. That's very, very likely now in the college landscape. And flashback, it wasn't that long ago that Najee Harris and Travis Etienne shocked everybody by going back to school, and they weren't getting that money. Well, at least above the table, they were not getting that money to go back to school.
yeah, by war of attrition, Kaleb Johnson could be my RB2 after it's all said and done. If you really think about it, so we don't go too long. We'll move to our next one. Woody Marks, he's probably my favorite. Right now, I think he's my RB5 or 6. Strengths, elite receiver, elite burst and long speed. Weaknesses is power. I think he's a poor man, Jahmyr Gibbs. I might be too high on him. I don't know. Like he's one that I specifically lowered because of size and power, that he could go to a situation where he might be more of a committee, but he does all the things that score us fantasy points well. Like Jeff, like you said, teams really value elite receivers. I think he is it. I know Matt, you didn't like Marshawn Lloyd, but at least the athleticism on Marshawn Lloyd and the receiving ability that we did see, Woody Marks has the production and he has a lot more of that on tape. So if you liked Marshawn Lloyd, I feel like you would love Woody Marks. Where are you at with him, Matt?
By the end of the draft process, I actually was pretty high on Marshawn Lloyd. I went back and watched a larger sample size, and it ended up, I think he was my RB3 in the class. But that aside, Woody Marks, I really liked. He actually reminded me a little bit of Bucky Irving last year. Not quite the contact balance. Like Bucky, for being a smaller guy, just had freakish contact balance. But the elusiveness, the jitterbug, like make somebody miss in short spaces. Woody Marks, it seemed like almost always made the first guy to get to him miss, which was pretty similar to what I liked about Bucky last year. And just very quick. I don't know. I wouldn't use necessarily the term explosive, like I said with Trevor Etienne, but quick. Like laterally, just can really change directions on a dime, stop, start. The dead leg cut, changing directions, and then reaccelerating out of that change of directions was really, really good for Woody Marks. I thought he played with pretty good pad level. being a smaller guy, that he was able to get low and break some tackles just by lower man wins. And so, really, between him and Etienne, I thought stylistically they were very similar. I thought Etienne was a little bit more explosive, but I thought Woody Marks was a much better pass catcher. So I've got those two guys within a point of each other in terms of film grade. I had Etienne slightly higher, but I like both of those guys quite a bit.
Jeff?
Yeah, I agree. I like him too. I think that one of the things that stands out to me is patience, and I think that patience, that to me, it's yeah, we're looking for the fast twitch, like quick twitch, like all that unteachable things, but when you've got a back at college that has patience, that can understand
Mm-hmm.
where to hit, that shows that the mental processing is there, and that if a player can't get that by the end of college, that by the end of their college career, I don't think that's ever going to happen in the NFL level. And so if you're not able to process the game and have that correct level of patience and be able to understand when to go, when to stop, those types of things, we've seen you did a great job, Matt, on his receiving ability. It's definitely there. He's got that background playing at Mississippi State. He was playing in more of an open passing offense. I like to see that out of running backs. It seems like that translates pretty well. But yeah, that next level understanding of how to play the position, and he's shown that, I do believe.
Yeah, like he's polished. It's like you said, um, that one cut ability. Like I think that if I was what's his name, Mike McDaniel, I'd be a little upset that I traded that future draft capital for Jalen Wright when I could have had Woody Marks, this next year, because you haven't really even used Jalen Wright that much unless you've had to. And
Jalen
his
Wright's like the complete opposite of what we're talking about. We're a player that
yeah,
has no patience at all.
yeah, he's just running in the back of people. Exactly, it's exactly like this guy. He just all right. There's a hole, and then he just zips right through it. And that's stuff in film where it's like you said, the twitchiness. I don't see it as often as you would think for a player his size because he puts himself in position to not need it. And if he does, so you said that first guy comes through, it doesn't even matter. He's easily one I could see moving up and being like an RB3 in the class if the rest of the NFL likes it. It's like he's got the tools.
Yeah, I had similar notes about the vision and patience. I thought he had really, it wasn't just about, hey, I'm going to consistently find the right hole that the scheme calls for, right? It was like the advanced vision of, I'm going to shade one way and get the defender to choose the wrong hole, and then I'm going to quickly bounce back the other direction. And the second level kind of creativity, knowing when to follow his blocks and when to uh, maybe get off script a little and create on his own. But yeah, he was fun in that regard. I had pretty high grades on him for both vision and patience. So I like that shout out, Jeff.
Yeah, our next guy, Jeff, I'll let you start with him. It's TreVeyon Henderson. I'm pretty high on him, and to give you guys some insight into my process, the viewers in here, I grade for pass blocking and stuff like that. I know for fantasy, a lot of people like that doesn't score me points, but that keeps you on the field. Like you look at a player like Kyron Williams. A lot of it's not just the little things that he can do as a receiver. Half of it is that he's a good blocker. And like Jeff, a point that you've made in one of our various shows this week is you don't have to pull him off the field because he can't pass block. You don't have to show your hand. That's why I like TreVeyon Henderson a lot. His strengths, he is a vicious blocker. Like it is like some of his tape, it's crazy. I did not expect that. He's just laying out linebackers. It's just crazy to watch. Good pass catcher, smart runner. Always seems to be in the right spots. He's a bit undersized. He looks, and that's just listed. He's another one where I don't see him being undersized on the tape as much as I just see it as where he's listed and just short yardage. A lot of that he just gets pulled off for Quinshon Judkins. Jeff, I'm going to let you start with him since you're the Ohio State guy.
Yeah, this is where Jeff gets called a homer, but no, I think he's phenomenal. I think he's a very, very talented back. I think Ohio State's offense line's atrocious this year, and there's been several times where he has absolutely saved them because they've just blown assignments, allowed guys free to the backfield, and he has just cleaned guys on pass blocking there. But I think the explosion is there. I think that he understands how to play the position. it was a shock when he came back to school because he was a high level prospect coming out, a blue chip prospect that when he signed with Ohio State, and he was an immediate contributor as a freshman, came back in that situation, split time with Judkins. The narrative's weird. Like, people are saying he's Judkins' backup and that he's forgotten about, and I don't know what's going on with that. It's just a weird narrative that's going around about him, and if that leads to a discount, that's fine. But he's probably gonna be my running back 2 when all said is and done, or my running back 3 potentially with Marion Hampton. I like him as well. I just think his game translates very, very well to the NFL level. We have seen teams have praised Ohio State, their running backs, because their ability to produce running backs that understand how to play the position at the NFL level. That is what I see with TreVeyon Henderson's extra time in school. And so I expect he will be one of the highest drafted backs in this class.
Yeah, I've got Genty, Judkins, then Henderson. And there's players in between them, and that's mainly me guessing draft capital and landing spot ahead of that. But Henderson and Judkins are like 2 points difference. Like, as far as their score, it's very minimal. What about you, Matt? Where are you at with them?
Yeah, I like Henderson quite a bit. His elusiveness was one thing that left a little to be desired for me, for a guy who's at least listed height weight a little bit on the smaller side. And he's not necessarily a power back. He also wasn't super elusive. So that was one slight knock that I had on him, but he's so fast. And you mentioned the blocking. I mean, I gave him a perfect 10 out of 10 on Pass Pro, and I don't give out, like, you have to be really elite for me to give a perfect grade in any category. So really, really high level there. And the receiving game in general, like catching passes, I just think they used him running angle routes and option routes and wheel routes, and just way more than a lot of these
Flex
other
them
running
out.
backs.
Yeah,
These other running backs that we've talked about, like, mostly it's been screens and checkdowns and your typical running back stuff. But yeah, Henderson, I think between his work between the tackles, his vision, his speed, his pass catching game, like, of everybody that we've talked about here, he's got the best chance to be a 3-down back. I think
yep,
Marks and Etienne are kind of that scat back that would be in a committee, but be more the receiving option in a committee. And then Kaleb and Monangai are more like the first and second down grinders. Henderson's the guy that can do both out of the ones that we've talked about. And so, I wish there was a little bit more of either the power or the elusiveness. I don't feel like he does either of those things at a super elite level. Um,
agreed.
but as far as, like, getting what's blocked for him, and then more because he just has the speed to beat angles, and then add the pass catching on top of that, that's where I think he really shines.
Yeah, my comp for him is he is as good as we think Kyron Williams is. Like like I love again. Like Kyron Williams has done a lot, but I just think that if Sean McVay had TreVeyon Henderson, it would just be insane, and we'd see a lot of those ugly efficiency numbers come up. All right, guys, that is the end of the running backs. Again, we know more. We have another 5 running backs in a previous episode that we've done. We're going to talk about 5 more. I've got like 23 grades already. We know, as always. We know. So with that being said, we love you. I'm Jagger May. That's Jeff Bell. That's Matt Cooper. We have our trade show coming up, and we'll see you on the next one.